welcome, and thanks for joining us again today for another episode of
Inside the Message.
And we're back. I'm Brother T, and it's my beautiful wife, Rev René.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us, and
Good to see you.
thank you for an amazing talk.
Thank you.
Continuing our theme of forgiveness, we think one of the most important messages of our experience in this life and necessary to our intention to ascend.
Absolutely.
And so thank you, Brother T. If you missed the message, you can check it out on our YouTube, this YouTube, at ttsc.tv. Or go to truethought.org and we'll direct you from there. But we're so very grateful that you have joined us. And I'm just going to have a little chat with Brother T here about the message. I'm going to ask a couple of the questions that I had. And then after this episode, you can feel free to join us on our Zoom and you can ask the questions that you have.
There you go.
So here we go. So one of the things that I noticed is that we have been working with a definition of forgiveness. So I want you to share the definition that we normally use, but you brought forth a new definition of forgiveness that I really liked. And I was hoping that you would share it again for this episode and add anything that you wish at this point.
Okay. Well, here at Truth Thought Spiritual Community, forgiveness is the definition that we're going to be using. Is that forgiveness is moving back. In other words, going back back to the beginning, so to speak, before we give judgment about anything. So in other words, going back, we're seeing something and we're experiencing it, but before we take that, next step, which is to evaluate it, give it meaning, start putting judgment, painting it with our judgment, we just stop right there. Let's go back to that place before we've added any other attributes of our thoughts on top of what we're experiencing.
Great. And so we're moving back before we give judgment.
Yes.
So the forgiveness is that we're actually forgiving ourselves for the judgments that we have laid upon one another and upon the world. You added, though, another definition, and you were springboarding off of my message the week before. And so what's in another definition?
Another definition is forgiveness is a celebration of love. It's an act of love. And it really is. It's an act of self-love. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit, but it's really an act of love because it's, again, moving back before the act of judgment. And the act of judgment, by and large, is painting something that's absolutely has no meaning, is neutral, like an illusion, painting it and giving it meaning and giving it some prominence or some place in our mind and allowing something that has no meaning whatsoever to cause us to be, distracted.
And additionally, what I heard is that it's a shift from the mind's focus upon fear and fearful thoughts, and that shift of returning to our natural state, which is a focus of love.
Right. And that's an important point because the idea is, or what we tend to believe is we're always working on ourselves. We have this idea of an idealized self. And if I was a good person, then I'd be able to forgive people. That's a statement that I've told myself, and I'm sure that's a statement I've heard from other people. But the point is, the self that's doing the judging, that mind, we're going to have to set that aside because that's not who we are. That's not what we are. So in order to get to true forgiveness, real and lasting, eternal forgiveness, is to move out of giving that mind our conscious awareness, withholding it, shifting it, and now we're over here focused and giving our attention to another aspect of ourself. That mind is still there. We're not trying to fix it up. We're not trying to change it. We're moving our awareness away from that self, that mind, over here to another aspect of who and what we are, which is our true nature. So it's our true nature to be forgiving when we're giving that mind our awareness.
Okay, great. So how is it that all forgiveness is really self-forgiveness, because I think that we've all had experiences in our lives where it felt like we were, just going about our business in life, and bam, out of the blue, someone or something happens to us.
We believe.
Right. And why is it that I need, so beyond the initial trauma of any event in a human experience, beyond that, we re-traumatize ourselves by carrying events that have occurred with us. And, many people that I work with, were actually going back in the history of their lives and going back and forgiving parents and forgiving siblings and forgiving former spouses. And these events have been carried with with the individual for years and sometimes decades and sometimes lifetimes, holding this idea that something was done that would justify the condemnation, and yet it's that person who is suffering. And so explain how all forgiveness is truly self-forgiveness and how we can get to that point.
Well, it's not comfortable to imagine that what's really happening is that we are in a contract or we're in agreement with these other people. And it appears that we're being victimized physically as a human being, that some event has happened and has caused us some distress, mentally, physically, financially, whatever. Emotionally, whatever it might be. But what we fail to recognize, what that self would completely, argue against, is that it would do that to itself, that we do that intentionally. And that we set ourselves up for those experiences. Why would we do that? Because you've never had an experience that you didn't learn from. And some of them, the teaching that's there is to move beyond the judgment of the frightened egoic self, right? Because it's just going to say, that happened, I'm a victim, or this person's a victim, and I'm going to champion that, I'm going to bring about justice, I'm going to if this, then that, right? But the bottom line, it takes one to know one. See, we believe somebody else is guilty because we've already judged ourselves for that. We already believe that we're the one that's actually already done that. We've already judged ourselves as wrong, and so when somebody else is playing that out, we're seeing ourselves, literally. We're literally seeing ourselves in what they're doing, and we're saying, don't do that, because we've already judged ourselves first, and we're not conscious of it, it's unconscious. But all of these agreements and all of these relationships that we're having in this physical world are ways for us to move beyond that through the principles and the practice of forgiveness, to move beyond the appearance that something's wrong, to recognize that what's really happening is just a narrative that's playing out for our own awakening, for our own ascension.
So this dovetails into the principle that it's a reflective universe.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and it's a vibrational universe. So we're attracting to us situations. Absolutely. Are we then to blame ourselves?
Well, when you have an experience and you're sleeping at night, you know how many times, and it's pretty hard for me to imagine. I guess I've forgotten any dreams that I had that were really horrific, where I felt like I was being tortured or victimized or harassed or whatever. Are you holding on to that as a grievance and can't wait to get to sleep again, so that if that comes up again, this time you're going to get even with that person? Do you ever really spend any energy doing that?
I don't recall doing that.
Right, because when you wake up, you realize it wasn't real.
Right.
But as long as we think that that's not real, what I'm dreaming about at night's not real, but I believe this is real, until I can transcend that commitment and to that belief, I'm trapped.
So that's on my list then, to discuss this idea of illusion. Man, it sure feels real to me.
Sure does.
If I bop you on the head right now, you're probably going to feel it, and it's going to feel real to you.
That's right.
So you said something like, I think you gave the example of an apple and an orange, which is better. And you can have an argument but it's like an arguing about illusion.
You're choosing between illusions.
You're choosing between
I mean, I see the apple there. Do you see the apple? It's in this hand, or
could be in this hand.
Could be. I mean, you can imagine whatever you want to imagine. She's got an apple here and an orange here. Which one's best? And let's have an argument. And maybe I can get enough people to agree with me that oranges are better, and we can put you out of business because you're the apple supplier. So we're going to just put you out of business. We don't like apples. We're going to cancel you, right? I'm going to get into all this drama and this craziness, but these are just illusions. They're just illusions.
But when I take a bite of that apple, it doesn't feel like an illusion. I can taste it. I can feel it. I can
Here's something else. Let me just interject.
All right.
You're asleep at night, and I roll over and bop you in the head.
Yeah.
Accidentally.
It never happens.
You're still asleep. You will incorporate that sense of pain into your dream.
Okay.
You'll believe that you're somehow being attacked or something's happening to you in your dream, and you'll make up a narrative. You'll make up some drama of being victimized in your dream. But nobody was really attacking you. Nothing was really happening in regards to the narrative that you create.
So what you're really saying is that what is an illusion is the perception of the grievance. Yes. That is the illusion.
The judgment that we lay on top of what we're experiencing is what's illusory.
And the story that we lay.
That's totally illusory. We're making it all up.
So because an event may occur and you're going to make up one story and I'm going to make up another story.
Right.
And if there's a person involved here, they've got a whole nother story.
That's why eyewitnesses
So we all are perceiving it differently.
Differently, everything. We're all perceiving everything differently.
So it is illusory.
There are similarities in our perceptions, but they're still coming from an illusory state of mind because you're not physical and you're not separate.
So forgiveness then wipes away or clears the illusory nature to reveal truth.
What's truth?
So it's not to say that the world is an illusion. It's the way that we perceive the world that makes it illusory.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Because I know when I first heard of all of that, I wanted to argue with it. Right. And I also wanted to say, well, how can that be? And it can be depressing to think of it that way. You know, it can be depressing that the illusions that we hold as real, and valuable as the structures of our lives, to find out that they're not real or they're illusory can be disarming.
It is. It's kind of like packing a suitcase full of all of your winter stuff and you head to Mexico. And you get there and you realize you didn't need it. You didn't need any of that at all.
That's great. That's awesome.
Because you're imagining something that's not going to be there when you get there.
Yeah.
When you as you begin to awaken, all the imaginations of the ego mind about what awakening are, what awakening is, what ascension is, what the imaginations that we create, the thoughts that we have about spirituality and all those things, it's all made up.
Right.
Spirituality isn't about learning. It's about unlearning all the things that we've made up so that we can begin to experience what real ascension is, what real truth is.
And so forgiveness is essential because what forgiveness really does is it removes the obstacles and the blocks of our awareness, of our own truth.
Yeah.
And of the love that we are.
Right. And I point to Jesus a lot because Jesus, he said, when you see me, you see the Father, right? He also said, forgive them. They know not what they do. We don't know what, we have no construct, or we have no idea, I should say, of the construct that we've made out of nothing.
Right.
It's a dream. It's illusory.
Right.
So the first hurdle is to be willing to accept that everything, pretty much that we've been told is this is all real, that if we can start seeing that that's really not as real as we've been told, and that creates a little bit of a crack in the wall, if you will, where light can begin to come in and we can begin to see, okay, maybe there's more here than meets the eye, and there's much, much more than meets the eye, and there's much more than meets the mind. There's really much more here than meets the mind, because your mind will really begin to expand once you take yourself out of the limited beliefs that we've been conditioned with in the world.
So we can think of our grievances. We can think of our aspects that all the judgments, all of the condemnations, all of the negative opinions that we hold about one another, about ourselves, about the world. And we can imagine them spinning about, almost like a storm, which you describe in your message. So all of that is whirling about in our experience. And not only that, it's whirling about in my experience and yours, and everybody's perceiving it differently. How on earth do we get out of that? How do we forgive?
Well, it would take a miracle.
Yes.
It would take a miracle, because what we believe and what we commit our belief system to is that this is real. And in order to experience a miracle, we have to shift from our commitment to that this is our reality to the possibility that there's another way of seeing things. We practice forgiveness by getting into the eye of the storm, getting to that quiet place, connecting with Spirit, and suddenly we're in a new state of mind. We're joined here, but we're no longer the thinking self. We've left that self aside. We've left that self aside with all of its thinking and its beliefs. And we're turning within. And when we connect with that mind begins to show us through the actual experience of being able to see beyond the illusion. So it's a miracle, and it's called a shift of perception. From one state of mind, like I'm sleeping at night and I wake up, it's a different state of mind. Right now, we would go from this state of mind, egoic, fear, existence as a human being, seeing ourselves as bodies. We can shift from this state of mind to the state of mind of our true self, which is not deluded by illusion, is not confused by illusion, none whatsoever. And so when we begin to join with that mind, right, just like when the sleeping self begins to join with us as we're waking up in the mornings, when we make that transition from one state of mind to the other state of mind, we're in a new reality. We're not going to fix up the old reality. We're going to transcend it and move to a new way of being in this environment in a lucid state of consciousness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really cool stuff.
That is awesome. And so that's what we call true forgiveness, real forgiveness. Right. A Course in Miracles talks about this at length. The lesson that actually comes to mind is lesson number 46. God is love in which I forgive.
Yes.
So you're stepping into that state of peace, the state of calm at the center of the storm is really to connect with the heart and mind of God. And how good it is to know, because many of us have tried our hardest to forgive. And isn't it wonderful to know that we don't do it alone? We do it connected in the heart and mind of love. And that love heals all things. And love helps us to have this ascension so that we can wake up and see the illusory nature of. So what happens when we forgive?
Well, that's a great question. And here's what I'm hearing as you were sharing what you just shared. Even your beliefs about forgiveness, you have to let those go.
Okay.
We believe forgiveness is doing a certain thing, right? We've been taught it by the world.
We have.
But you have to even let that go.
Because there's a self-righteousness.
Of course.
In some concepts of forgiveness. Well, I know better, or forgive them. We can even say forgive them. They know not what they do, in a kind of a condescending way.
Of course.
And that, I, high and mighty, am going to bestow forgiveness upon, somebody else. And so we let go of all of the conditioned ideas about forgiveness. We become willing to do that. That's a great point. And to allow the love that God is to be the guide.
Well, we become a new person.
Yeah.
We become a new expression We're no longer that. When you wake up from the sleeping self, you're not that self anymore.
So when you see me, you see the Father, Mother,
You see,
God,
you're
presence.
You're not seeing the personality self anymore.
Or how Jesus was unrecognizable when, after the crucifixion, after the tomb experience, he was not recognizable. Or when you see me, you see the Father, Mother, presence. So beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. So what I know for myself and what I have experienced is that when I allow this forgiveness to make me new, to transform me, I am in this field of love. My heart is so open. And then I am lighter. It's like I've given up a burden, and I'm a freer, more open channel for the creative expression that I'm here to be. And so holding all that unforgiveness, holding that, what it seems like it's about another, but it's really what we carry. We set ourselves free. And as we're willing to give forgiveness, this is really what we're doing. We're receiving it for ourselves. Giving and receiving are one. We experience it, we feel it, and then we free ourselves and we free others to then be about the kingdom of heaven here now.
So it's not really about learning how to forgive.
Okay.
Right? It's shifting to a new you. And that new you is really the old you. And the old you has
the original you?
The original natural self.
Okay. All right.
It has never judged.
Yeah.
And when you see the clarity and purity of that mind and it becomes your experience of being, then you laugh at the whole idea of forgiveness because there's nothing to forgive.
And that's the consciousness of God, because we say, God doesn't forgive. What do you mean God doesn't forgive? My whole life I went to confession to get God's forgiveness. So God never withheld forgiveness because God never had the prerequisite of condemnation or judgment that forgiveness would require. So it is for us.
Yes.
And yet it is God's love and the consciousness of that mind by which we can be made new and forgive.
Exactly.
Thank you. What an amazing, wow, what a great conversation. We're gonna talk about this in a couple minutes on our Zoom. So, join our mailing list at truethought.org, and then you'll get an email that will have the Zoom link. And we just get on for about an hour and we chat about this conversation. It is a safe place to have the conversation, but it is also specific to the subject that we're discussing. So you can bring your questions. We can share our experiences with one another. And then finally, if you find value in this, we're going to invite you to share or bring a friend along, because we are growing our family and we would love for you to be a part of it and for us to know one another. Anything else? Oh, and then this Sunday, I will be continuing the conversation. We're going to dig even deeper with this idea of forgiveness. I don't know. I feel like the conversation might be complete, but I have a feeling there's something more to say.
I know you do.
Yeah.
I know you do.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother T. I love you, man.
Yeah,
I love you, man.
Love you, man.
Love you, man and woman.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you in the Zoom session. Have a great week. God bless you.
God bless.